Hello everyone, it's Dr.bladekid here. I thought I would make a tier list. Alright, off meta, B minus. Rhino Horn.
I wouldn't be surprised if one of the low B tier was Rhino Horn.
Rhino Horn's not too bad. Nope. It's definitely not the best you could use for attack, but take a look at its shape, right? It's got these annoying snag contact points right here. That helps for attack. These contact points here are good for defense. Or good-ish for defense. Better for defense. So you have this four-leaf clover of death. It's heavier than the other ones. It's 32 grams. And like a decent-ish 32 grams. Like 32 and a half. Not terrible. Its gimmick is, if we look, it's just incredibly thick compared to most other Beyblades. So the thickness, combined with how small it is, gives it a lot of central weight and makes it really compact. So launching it, it basically scales with RPMs like crazy. So the harder you launch it, you can get some insane speed from Rhino Horn. It does lose juice faster, but it is easier to gain juice. So keep that in mind. And it is kind of light, so getting it up to that speed is definitely possible. So its niche of just like a speed demon is pretty good, and it has more weight than the other two, so I think it has merit for sure. However, it's really hard to compensate for how much stamina it does not have, and how much it tends to fall off if it doesn't get the first few hits, I've noticed. Especially if something is fighting back. I find that especially in attack v attack, it tends to suffer from its own recoil more. Because it has a shape like some of the top tier attack types, but it's just light. It's just incredibly light. It can cook for sure. My confidence is probably like about 3 out of 5. It could definitely, like again, I could be glazing it. It could definitely be like worse. Maybe I just have like a more unbalanced one than I want, but I've noticed its consistency isn't super high, for me at least. When it does hit, it hits, but I still notice that it doesn't have that much longevity in the middle of the battle. That combined with just the fact that it's like kind of light and it's kind of compact, it does mean it gets knocked around, and it usually doesn't have the advantage, but it's a small chunk, and it does its work. Next up, we got Bite Croc. Worst Shark Edge, bad Shark Edge.
Are you sure about that?
Alright, Patera is next. So it has a slightly different shape than Viper Tail. On the side, it's reduced a little bit, which actually cleans it up and makes for more direct attacks. But on the top, the contact points kind of arc out more. They're like a bit more bendy and rounded off. These ones are kind of more direct. They strike harder. It's more of a full angle. It has more of a hook. So it's got some pretty good attack, but it is one that scales with RPMs as well. It doesn't stack with RPMs like Rhino Horn does with essential weight. It's just the fact that its shape just likes to be fast, I'd say. It's kind of a Shark Edge thing. It just likes to be launched fast for it to work optimally. As far as my confidence, it's about a 2. Definitely not as high. I've heard some people say it's like straight up a meta pick. That it's like, yeah, just launch it hard enough and it's super meta. But I've also heard people say it's stinky. And I find it kind of stinky myself. And I can't get it to do what those people say. That they say it's good. I can't get it to do that. And it also, like, it tilts very hard, I've noticed. It'll super tilt. And it'll tilt more and more throughout the battle and waste all its effective attack time. So I don't like it very much. I have to, like, put it lower in the confidence list just because, like, people say it cooks real hard. And they're, like, pretty reputable. I'm putting it low, but I do think that, like, I've seen it cook on occasional Tuesdays, and I can understand if you can get it to cook that hard at all times. Yeah, it could cook, but I can't. Alrighty then, next up, we got one of my favorite Beyblades of all time, Nightlands. I know a lot about Nightlands. It's quite the spicy pick. I will say the things that are good about it real quick, and then I'll say the things that make it bad. It's got nearly the stamina of something like Hell Scythe, and Unicorn Sting and those kind of Beyblades, it's got some pretty good stamina. Its attack is like low-key kind of real good, honestly. It hits hard, hits pretty consistently. It is kind of light, but definitely sending a message on the attack front. Yeah, I think it is solid. However, it has a gap, meaning it gets bursted, and it's kind of top-heavy, meaning it loses stamina matchups that it should have won. So it's just a kind of frustrating, like, inconsistent... It could be, like, off-meta plus one day if it really got consistent. But, yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate about that. As far as confidence goes, I think it could go up, potentially. So I'm going to say, like, 3 out of 5. There are genuinely some spicy combos you can do with this. Like, don't sleep on it. Don't just use, like, the low flat. There are some cool things. It's a really cool thing. And in, like, an early meta, it's a really fun off-meta pick. Next up, Hell's Chain, or Chain Incendiary. Chain Incendiary is kind of like a stamina defense type hybrid. It's 33 grams, which, hey, it's heavy compared to the other things in the tier. It's got a pretty good shape. It's almost like a functional black shell shape. Yeah, if you look at it, it's kind of got a it's double layered. It kind of has like the upward contact points and the downward contact points. But yeah, as you can see, it's kind of angled like black shell, and it's rounded off, and this makes it like pretty good for defense. To be honest, it's not gonna be cooking super duper hard, but it's gonna work. It's got pretty decent stamina too. Almost that of Hell Scythe, but not like, there's like still a clear difference. I think it can honestly be run on some really nice balance builds. And as far as the Hasbro meta goes, besides like, you know, the Wizard Rod that's come out, this is still like one of the better picks. Because it can actually contest with things like Phoenix on some days. You know, it's not consistent. No defense type really is consistent at this point in the list, but it's still a defense type, and it has pretty good stamina for a defense type, so it can kind of be used as like an all-rounder. If you only have one layer, this is a really good one you can use if you don't really know what to run and don't have anything super duper good. It's good. I like it a lot. As far as confidence goes, I'm fairly confident in this one. Yeah, I think it's I don't think it could really go anywhere besides this spot in the tier list. Definitely, like, it's nowhere near this low. It's a little lower than the things in the tier. I would almost consider these two tiers to be, like, almost the same. I kind of split them up because people told me to. So some of the cuts are going to seem weird. The next up, we have Phoenix Rudder. It's 34 grams. So being a stamina type, that's pretty heavy. Wizard Rod is only like 35 grams, for reference. It's UX, so it has extra weight distribution on the outside. It's got a shape that kind of pushes things down. Yeah, here we go. If you take a look at this, the shape pushes down, which isn't too bad. It's domed up, which is nice. These contact points here, these plasticky ones, which... Plastic is nice on defense because it reduces recoil even just a little bit. Not terrible. It has decent enough stamina, but I've never seen too much about it cooking. But this is kind of one that I'm not really super duper confident in either. So I'm probably going to put that in, I'm probably going to put this in like 2. I will say it is at the very least this good. For sure at the very least this good. Because I've seen it cook. But it might even be like a little bit better than this. I don't 100% know. I kind of didn't say much on Phoenix Rudder, but like, there's surprisingly not much to say about a 34 gram stamina type Phoenix Wing. Like, there really isn't. It's just kind of a generic, like, every other stamina type. Just kind of does what it does. It spins and then gets hit out of the stadium sometimes. So I can't really comment much more about it. And at the king of this tier, probably was gonna leave it in the other one, but I wanted to make the 2 tiers even, so it's gonna be this way. Tusk Mammoth. It's actually like not as bad as you'd think. People complain about the imbalance, right? But look at Hellscythe, and look at all these sharp edges, and then look at Tusk Mammoth, and look at how smooth and round it is. It's genuinely smooth and round. And it still has similar-ish weight, I think. It might be a little bit less. It makes it more of a defensive Beyblade, because it doesn't have the air pockets there. Is that the Ice Age? No, it's not. I'm just dumb. I just have brain rot. But yeah, the round contact points actually help it. And the imbalance does too, for defense. Surprisingly, you don't always want an imbalance on defense, but in this case, with Hexa on 760, the little bit of imbalance helps direct the Hexa tip, and it's pretty nice. You're not getting super good wins with this, but it cooked surprisingly hard for Tusk Mammoth as a defense type. Definitely, like, surprised me. I'm still putting this, like, pretty low on the confidence rating, though. Maybe like a 2, maybe a 3. I'll say a 2 for now. It's just the nature of testing defense types, because sometimes you cannot tell if you're getting unlucky. Sometimes you cannot tell if it's actually just the Beyblade's unique movement dodging, or if it's your attack type missing because they're desynced. It's a whole process testing defense, but you kind of just have to play it by ear and play it by how much you see a KO get KO'd and where it's getting KO'd from. But yeah, I'm not too confident, but I think it's a pretty strong defense type. I really like it anyways. All right, on to Off Meta Plus. We're going to start off with a familiar face, Dronsword. Dronsword's like pretty much a balanced attack type. It has pretty decent stamina, no Phoenix Wing stamina, but it's pretty decent. Pretty good attack. It's smash, but it has some points for upper, so that's pretty cool. It's versatile. You can launch it hard, and it's going to hit hard. In the early meta, it kind of dominated, with Hellscythe Ball being the titular stamina type. Dronsword was like a meme for a bit, of it just being like, we called it 2X, or 2-0, because it's like, man, we got 3 new Beyblades, and Dronsword's just easily the best one. But as the meta kind of leveled out, and these attack types kind of became more common, this just became a pretty solid, like, decent, middle-of-the-road, average attack type. And that's kind of where Dronsword belongs. Next up, we got three-sided cousin, Hell's Hammer. Hell's Hammer is kind of a disappointment. It's 33 grams, so it's kind of got the Phoenix feather issue, where it's just too light. Its shape, this contact point here, that kind of cuts downward, is not good for doing that purpose. Like, there's not enough weight pushing it down for that to be effective. It can kind of scoop on again, but you see how rounded off it is. However, it's like, it's got a three-sided, consistent, wide blade shape with some, like, curve to it. And yeah, it kind of hits. It's very reminiscent of Spiral from Metal Fight. Yeah. I'm sure you can see the comparison already. Yeah, here we go. Very similar in design, but this has wider gaps, obviously, and thinner, and kind of wants to scoop from below. Whereas Hell's Hammer is kind of like a little bit. It kind of does that, but it also, its gimmick is that it's supposed to hit down based on just this part of the blade. But it kind of doesn't achieve that, unfortunately. However, still a solid attack type, I'd say. I'm not as confident about this one as Dronsword, but I'm like, it's definitely not. Again, some of these are like, I can't see it being in the 2 below. Maybe I can see this one being in the 2 below. I definitely can't see it in the 2 above, which is why some of these picks are going to be like less confident but more justifiable, if that makes sense. It was like, I'm not as confident, but like based on what I've tested and how it's played out, it doesn't really do too much to the top tiers, but it can absolutely tango with these things. And it has similar consistencies. Next up, personal baby mine, Night Shield. Solid defense type. Its shape is like real good. If you take a look, it's just bumpy, round. These air pockets actually like, this is a lot thinner than you'd think, this shell. So by these two strips here and these things in the middle, this air pocket gives it more centralized weight than outward weight, which is really, really nice. It has some solid defense because of that, and just its shape is really nice, especially on Elevate. Pop this on Elevate and you got yourself a deal. But unfortunately, it's just too light at 32 grams to, like, be justifiable, is what I'll say. Everything in these two tiers, I'd say you can justify using. In this, it's like you're using it because you want to use it. Anything here down. And that's just that's the unfortunate reality of Beyblade. Because, like, this, I'm not using it because I like the night motif. I'm using it because I want a solid defense type. But I'll just use Silver Wolf or Nightmail even. But yeah. A genuinely solid defense type. On Elevate, it's nice. 760 hexes, like, again, kind of mid. It wants to be mobile because it doesn't really lose too much spin from collision because it's so good at deflection that it'll kind of, like, bully other things into losing their stamina to their own recoil. So, yeah, solid Beyblade, I think. I'm putting this, like, 4 out of 5. Definitely, like, 100% solid. Just slept on and not really, like, worth it anymore. Which sucks. That's how Beyblade is, though. Again, I'm happy because we have better options. Next up, we got Drawn Dagger. I don't own the extra gram one, so we're not going to be going off of that. But, yeah, Drawn Dagger has a really cool shape. So, Drawn Dagger has these really flat-edged contact points. They're, like, flat and rounded off at the tip. These are really good for anti-attack. They're good for, like, staircasing. So, like, the Beyblade will kind of ride this up and then fall off here. And that'll give the impact, basically. Then it'll give the gap. This is just good for deflection. And it's also just good for not being susceptible to its own recoil. Which is kind of the star of the show here. It's pretty good at resisting recoil. And I like that about it. So definitely here. As far as confidence goes, I don't even own the heavier version. So I will put it in 2 out of 5. There's a chance that even this version is better than I'm leading on. Or again, it could be like, there's always a chance it could just straight up go in the tier here. That's the reality about it. And even without the 36 gram mold, it's 35 grams. So yeah, it's the heaviest thing we've seen so far. So that's cool. Crimson Garuda. Yeah, I've heard it's kind of like a... Some people swear by it saying it's really good. Some people saying it's really mid. I've heard it's kind of like a Shark Edge-ish style. I've seen it hit hard for sure. But it's 34 grams. So it's definitely light. And I've seen how much it gets knocked off balance. It's also offset, and it's an oval. That gives it good recoil. Though it's very inconsistent from what I've been able to tell. And what I've been able to tell is not that much, because I don't own this Beyblade yet. I have one coming in the mail, but I do not own this Beyblade yet. I'm sure my thoughts will not change. Unless I just love it, and it kills everything. Because some people swear by it. But most people say it's like, yeah, it's kind of like, it's good. And next up on the chopping block, Lightning El Drago. It's a left spin thing. It's surprisingly good anti-attack. I found that 960 low flat gives it enough life after death to outspin some things, some like attackers. So that's cool. Low flat also gives it the El Drago scoop. It's mostly plastic with a thin ring of metal in the middle. So take that advantage for what you will. I like it as anti-attack. But it can also be used on Elevate as... it's hard to describe. Not really a more defensive, but I guess a more recoil negative Dragoon. That doesn't have as high of a level of consistency, but it's still going to do the trick against a lot of things. And as far as like on the attack, it's not too bad. It can definitely hit some scoops, but its biggest issue is it's unbalanced. You can get it to balance, for sure, a little bit, but even when it is balanced, it's not quite there. It's 34 grams, so again, it suffers a bit, but the amount of plastic on it really, it does make it a unique anti-attacker, and the fact it's left spin. I do like it as like a left spin anti-attacker. So I might even run this as like a meme build at some point, but yeah. Off meta plus is where it goes. Confidence wise, I've heard mixed things about this. It could either be a lot worse than I'm saying or a lot better than I'm saying, but more likely to be worse than I'm saying. Left Spin King J, one of my friends from Indiana, he really likes this thing. But I personally I didn't like it that much. I found it was a good equalizer. It could be, for sure. You just gotta balance it really hard. But it could work. It could work. But it's not as good as something coming up down on the list. So yeah, that's where it goes. Okay. Leon Crest. I got quite the history with Leon Crest. I wished it was a really good defense type. It wasn't. However, it's not a terrible defense type. I'd argue, with everything on the list right now, it's a good defense type. You can defend against most of the things on this list. Yeah, it's definitely top heavy. It topples over for sure. And I might be, again, putting it a little bit high. But you launch it hard, and you get the right build. And it can defend, for sure. It can tank hits. And for a defense type, this was the first thing that kind of showed, like, ooh, something might be able to be a defense type. So I give it a little bit of credit for that. It's got a cool plastic gimmick, but most people know about it, and most people know it makes it top heavy. And while the gimmick's not bad, it doesn't really save it. It's 35 grams as well, which isn't super duper light. However, it's not quite what it needs to be for a like upper attack resisting top heavy Beyblade. You need something that's like more 37 gram range, I'd argue. Biggest issue is inconsistency, but yeah. Definitely like you can do some stuff to the tiers above. You can defend against some stuff, but you might get outspun. Okay, confidence rating. I'm like pretty confident. It might be like straight dog water for sure. But you know what I mean? I don't think it's worse than like, maybe it's worse than Hell's Chain, but I don't think so. I think it's towering mass, and the fact it can definitely negate some recoil with the gimmick, and it does have some good weight to it. Not awful, but definitely not a defense type I'd want to like bring to a serious bracket, unfortunately. All right, next up, Hellscythe. Hellscythe is like, even in today's meta, it has a little spice. It used to kind of be the dominant stamina type for Unicorn, kind of leveled the playing field. But it's got a pretty jagged design. It's got those air pockets. It's got these like, okay. It's got the stamina contact points of a lifetime, if I'll show you. Yeah. So these like, this like hookish contact point with like a little hook ski on the edge. Very stamina-ish contact points. Because they're kind of a way to have this continuous wavy shape without coming to like a hard edge. So yeah. You have some rounded off things, some hooks here and there. Good shape, but just wow, do they do a good job making a balanced type of stamina type right off the bat. It also has like some spicy stationary potential. It's nothing much, but it's spicy. It can hit hard sometimes, and I've had my rod, like X finished in the X zone. It's a little sad, but I think that the fact that just launch hard, win game, can work out if you KO things by accident, that's a merit for sure. Confidence. I'm thinking 4 out of 5. For sure. 4 out of 5. And last in this tier, but definitely not least in this tier, Unicorn Sting. Oh yeah, Unicorn Sting is like, if Hellscythe is stamina attack, this is stamina defense. This half is really smooth, and this half is really bumpy. But like, this half is super smooth, and this half is really good for defense. And these two are like the stamina part and attack part, I guess. That's kind of where the hook comes into play. That's really the main point of vulnerability, is just these two hooks. Like, yeah, this is a pretty sizable point, but this right here, it does what Drawn Dagger does, but over a longer span of a multiple barrage of hits, meaning that it's able to have a wide contact point and not have it turn into an aggressive one when there's a gap here. So yeah, it's a well-designed thing, and I don't know if we're gonna be able to look at the bottom of it, but it's hollowed out, but in a good way, in a way that gives it better outward weight. You see that hollow out there? That gives it so much more stamina. It's a dubski. It's a dubski of a layer. Like, look at that space for outward weight. And I'm also thinking 4 out of 5 for Unicorn. As far as like confidence, I know they're both good. Obviously, they're both like they're just outside of what I'd consider like tournament viable, if that makes sense. But I still think you can get away with them for sure. Like, that's what this tier is. Like, is things that not optimal, but you could absolutely get away with. Both of these tiers. And I think, obviously, this tier is technically the more viable stuff, especially these last few. Like, Unicorn Sting actually counters Phoenix to a certain extent because of the defensive shape. So keep that in mind.
So hey guys, this is Dr.bladekid editing now, and I've gotten to this part where it says I'll cover by Croc at the end, and if we get to the end, right, you realize I didn't really cover by Croc. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Bite Croc isn't gonna be in this video, because it's definitely better than I thought. I won't spoil where I'm putting it on the list. That'll be for next part. But yeah, just know it is, I didn't forget, it's just not on this section of the list.